Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Tochi. You guys are very much welcome. So guys, today's video is a very important one and it's very interesting. So we're talking about childcare and all of that. So if you're a parent, you're coming to the UK with your children, or you plan to have children in the UK, this video is definitely for you. Please watch this video because we'll be discussing like in details all you need to know, because a lot of us came to the UK ignorant, like we don't know what it's all about training children abroad. We've heard a lot of stories. There are people who are even contemplating leaving their children back home and coming to the UK. Me, I'm not a fan of that. I don't think I can be comfortable living in this part of the world and my children will be living somewhere else. No, no, I'm not part of that. So we'll just be talking about how to live with your children in the UK and be happy, and everybody will be happy. You have social workers off your back. Because it's very, very hard coming to the UK and then you come to the UK only for social workers to take your kids away from you. So we're just here to talk about all that. And I have a very special guest here who is a qualified social worker. So she's in the best position to tell us what to do so that everybody will be happy at the end of the day. So she would introduce herself briefly and then we'll dive right into the video.
Thank you so much, Tochi. I'm really, really very glad to be here. Hello, everyone. My name is Anne Atama, and I work as a senior social worker with one of the local authorities within the West Midlands. It's really diverse, so I have worked with communities, people from different countries and different communities, and even Nigerians as well from different languages and tribes. So I have good understanding of what a lot of people who come into the country go through with children's services, either because they do not understand the process or because they feel that a foreigner or a stranger does not have the right to question the way that they are parenting within their home.
All right, thank you so much, Anne, for being here. I really appreciate it. I've made a video before on that was actually a question, like, are they actually out to get Africans? Are they out for African families? That was the question. I just discussed some of the things I've observed and all of that in that video. If you've not seen it, maybe you want to see it. But Anne is here to actually tell us the facts, because obviously currently she's a social worker, so she has experience to tell us what to do and basically just give us the right information. So Anne, please, thank you for coming here once again. So let's start from the basic. What is it like having children abroad or having children in the UK? Do you think it's a bit challenging? Do you think, people shouldn't have kids because if you have kids, social workers will come and take your kids away from you? Or no, it's advisable for people to leave their children back home and come to the UK and be sending money to them to be on the safe side? Generally, what would you say about having children and raising them in the UK?
I think that having children and raising them in the UK is like it's one hell of a task. It's almost like another level of parenting. For one, you are a foreigner in a new country. In this country, in a country where you do not have any family, very limited family members who can help or support you. And then you are here and you see that, the way of life is very different. The way people do not really shout at children, or, it's just so different. It's like every man to himself and you're trying to sort things out by yourself. It's really daunting to be raising a child here. But would I advise that people send their children home whilst they're here hustling? To be honest, that was something that I considered, myself and my husband considered some time ago. But knowing from my training and what I know a lot about attachment theory and how that can impact on the child, that's not something that I would ordinarily advise, because you'll be missing out a lot on your child's growth, on your child's development, and you might not really be there for your child. And at the end of the day, maybe when you get to have your children come over, they're totally different from what you had in mind that you want to, the kind of children that you had in mind or you planned to raise initially. So I always say that no one can do it better than you, even if it's your closest family members. They have their own children who will definitely be a priority, and your child will come after. I know that circumstances are different, so if you have to, by all means, but if you can, do your best to see if you can raise your child here. And it's possible. A lot of people are doing it. Tochi and I are doing it, and I know that lots of families who are doing it, and they have children who are doing really grown into adults and are doing well, and still have that a good balance of the African or the Nigerian culture and the UK culture, which I feel like if you're able to get that balance, it's really fantastic, really, to have that good balance of both cultures and together.
Right, thank you very much. So from your experience so far, what would you say are the causes of this thing that we have to deal with? Like, what is the major reason why it seems like sometimes social workers are after some African families or some immigrants in the UK? So I know they're not only after immigrants. I know they also do it, or I know they also treat like English people the same way. But it's just because we're Africans and we're in a new country, so it seems like, oh, these people are after us, and so we have to always be careful. So what would you think is the basic reason why all these things happen?
What I would say is that the reason why people, it seems like they're, I wouldn't say, just like you say, I wouldn't say they're really out for African families, or maybe they're not as, maybe there might be a feeling that these guys are quite harsh. Let's take, for instance, if there's an issue in school where maybe you have hit your child and a disclosure is made, and police gets involved, social services get involved, and all of that, and everything just blows up in your face, and it's like, no, be just small slap, like just small slap like this. What is going on? So because you are coming from a different society where these things are very acceptable, you then feel like, these guys are doing a bit too much. So I think it's not as if they are necessarily overdoing it because you're African, but I think the fact that you are not, this is something that is accepted. This is a learned culture for you. It just doesn't make sense to you that they would want to blow up things like that. But in this land, unfortunately, certain things are not acceptable. So these children go to school, they see how kind teachers are, how gentle and how calm. They are not in, no teacher is in their face saying, oh, do this as homework, do this, otherwise I'll give you this. And so they begin to say, oh, this is different from what I'm used to. And you've got to know that they actually talk about these things in school. They would ask questions, and all of these things. So children get to know and understand. So people come into school to tell, like, I remember I've been invited to a school to tell children about my job, what I do and all of that. So if they are equipped with that kind of information and they're like, oh, my dad is actually hitting me with a belt or doing this or doing that. Yeah. I know that what he's doing, he's actually in the wrong. So it's then your child, your child is almost in a fix, because they are experiencing this kind of treatment at home, but they are seeing their friends' parents being really gentle and kind to their, even when they do something wrong, the way they are correcting them is in a much calmer way than we would correct. So they get to see it and experience a different culture for themselves. And so sometimes, especially teenage, I guess maybe your friends, I think especially teenage boys, when they are at that age of having to understand their own identity, they will begin to almost feel like they need to actually almost sort of rebel the kind of discipline or the kind of, the way that their parents would treat them. I don't know if that makes
yeah. And I also think that some parents are a bit extreme.
Social services ordinarily are not there to collect your child. The first thing is to support you to be able to care for your child. Nobody wants to remove. That's the last thing on our minds. Though I know that people think that once it's social services, they are removing children. So a lot of people do not really love social workers. But the initial idea is to do everything possible, equip parents with what they need to get to care for their children, because children are best cared for within the home, their birth home, the home where they are. And if it's not possible within the home, then we look at families. So what we found out with this family, despite all of the intervention, we found out that it seemed like when parents can no longer hit the child, but the child's behavior is getting worse. because the only parenting skill they had was to hit. So if he messes about, they hit him. And now he has gone to school. He had a bruise, went into school and said, my parents hit me and stuff, and we got involved. So even though we are giving all that teaching, it's almost a bit late now, because it's almost like you're starting from scratch to begin to learn the skills. So sometimes you can tell yourself that I'm not going to hit my children. I'm not going to shout, And then before you say jack, the next minute is like, you throw caution to the wind. It's like, how dare you do this or that, and all of that. Because it is our learned behavior is that on impulse, we just, give a dirty slap or a hard conk on the head and all of that. And like you said about parents being extreme, I think some parents are really extreme. Why would you come to the UK? You're in the UK, you've heard things, and you still hit your child with a belt and cause an injury. Because the first thing is that when your child says in school, they check your child. They start checking, and we do not have to ask permission, because that is also, that child might have been abused. And I know that there's all these things about data protection and confidentiality and all of that. But if it's in the child's best interest that you're not asked for permission, if they see an injury, they're calling the police, and it just seems like everything blows up. In a twinkle of an eye, they're calling you and saying the police is coming out, you're having to be arrested, go and give a statement, all of those things all at once, But I think that if you're coming, you've got to know that. And that's why I think that if you're watching this from Nigeria and you haven't come, start practicing that, start learning patience. Because I think with physical abuse, and it's not just physical abuse, like the two things that I feel, the two major things that I have noticed since I started working as a social worker for African families being involved with children's services is physical abuse and neglect. Those are the two main things. So where children are being left on their own overnight to go, I know about a case. These were 5-year-old twin children that was actually the first case I shadowed years ago when I started working. And, obviously, unfortunately, this mom was a single mom, and, she left the kids on their own. Neighbors were watching. Every night she was going to work in a cold flat, really messy, really untidy, children are turning up in school late. So all of those things, if you make sure that children are going to school, just don't make them put you on the spotlight. Don't do anything to make school start worried. Should we be worried? Is there something going on, here? Is there something going on here? If that's the case, the school will tend to look for more information. The moment they can put their finger on something, or you've got neighbors who will be, seeing you sneaking out to go and work every night and coming back in the early hours of the morning. And if you're not friendly, and sometimes we come to this country and we're just keeping to ourselves. We're keeping to ourselves and we're not friendly with our neighbors or anything. If you have issues with your neighbors, they'll be very quick to tell on you.
All right. So 2 questions from everything you just said now. The first one, what is the correct measure to discipline a child? All right. So what would you say is reasonable? Is it that we shouldn't spank at all? We shouldn't shout? What is the best way to discipline a child here in the UK? And secondly, when we talk about neglect, at what age can you actually leave a child alone, maybe overnight or for a long period of time to go out and come back?
Okay. So in terms of what measures we could use other than hitting a child, and whether we shouldn't spank at all. So I think with in Scotland, it's actually a criminal offence if you spank your child. And in the UK, if you hit your child and there is an injury, a visible injury that can be seen, it will be classed as assault, that you assaulted your child. So you could get arrested for that. So what I would say is don't spank.
At all?
Don't spank at all if you
Whether there is a mark or not.
Whether there is a mark or not, don't spank. Try not to spank. I know it's really hard. And I always say that because we're not used to it, it's not going to be easy to just stop overnight. But just be willing to change, to try new ways. And the thing is, once we take away spanking from us, we're actually left with what other disciplinary skills do we have? That's a question that we then ask. You can keep them away, you can distract them, so you don't have to win. I think it's almost like a battle between parent and child. We are constantly wanting to say we are the authority, especially here in the UK. I am the one who is in charge. You've got to listen to me, whether you like it or not. But I think that sometimes with parenting, it's just, we have to pick our battles as parents, okay? Especially when you're in the UK, in this era where I did an article years ago, some time ago, and I was talking about the 4 types of parenting that we have. So there's authoritative, there's authoritarian, and there's 2 others that I can't remember at the moment. But I think for us as African parents, we tend to fall between the authoritarian, where we just, our word is the bond. We shout out our demands. We shout, the children they have no voice. We take away the voice. You do as I say, and we have a very high expectation of our children. We've got to know that children will be, even we as adults, we still make mistakes. But I think we expect that our children should be perfect. And I feel like it's we wanting our children to be a version of ourselves that we are not. I don't know if that makes sense. But we want our children to be perfect above mistakes, whereas we as adults, we still make those mistakes, and all of that. So I think we need to allow room for errors and for correction. So if your child, for instance, just to answer your question, Tochi, sorry that I went around. If your child hits, maybe you have an older child who would hit, be rough with the younger child, and you actually hit that older child because they've hit the younger child. Imagine you using what that child did. So you're trying to tell your child that you don't hit your little sister, be kind to your little sister, yet you are being unkind by hitting that child.
Yeah.
Then what is that child learning? And the thing is, these children, the truth of the matter is that we hit our children today because our parents hit us. If our parents use a different technique to raise us, that is what we would use to raise our children. That's why most of this white family, I'm just in awe. And one of the things I did when I came to, I've got to learn because in my head I'm like, how can I raise an obedient child, a good child without spanking the child? Is it even possible? So I said to myself, I've got to observe. I've got to sit and actually learn. Apart from reading books and all of this, I want to see it for myself. It's not really about what the child has done has triggered us, but we as parents, we are the ones who should be mature enough to control our emotions, because we are teaching our children emotional intelligence by the way we react, we act and react. It's not everything that we have. We don't have to shout all the time, and learn to, okay, you did this. One of the things, I know you're talking about strategies. We can take things off of children. I know these children love games and all of those things. If you work with your child, because you're wanting to create an environment where your child can feel that they are safe, they can talk to you about anything, both of you can actually come up with the rules and the house boundaries together and come up with a consequence. You do this to your sister, you're in your room for 15 minutes. You do this for a whole weekend. You do not have your tablet or your iPhone or your whatever you use. And you know that these children, this is how these children are addicted to these things. And imagine taking a tablet from a child for a whole weekend, but they can't come and tell you anything because it was you and them that wrote the house boundaries, and you write it on a paper and put it on your wall so everybody can see it. Or you do the rewards thing where you're teaching the kindness, you're reinforcing positivity, which is something that we tend not to do as African parents. We are quick to see the fault, but we never acknowledge the good things that our children are doing. So there's a lot of ways that there's alternative ways, really, gentler ways. I know that a lot of people won't agree with me, but
I agree with you.
So there's something called, they would say that I know that, I also know for white families that will leave their children at home from age 14, and all of that. Now that there's the children are spending all day on their Xboxes and stuff. I know some people who might be leaving their children at home even from age 12, but ideally we would say from age 16 would be the ideal. But there's something called the Gillick competence. So where you are making decision about a teenager based on their level of maturity. So you might have a 16-year-old who, the level of maturity of that 16-year-old, you will not leave your little child with that. Even though that person is 16, you won't have the mind of leaving your little child with that person. But on the other hand, you can have a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old who is much more mature, and you feel like, they would be able to, you can actually leave your child with that person, as long as they've got phones and call emergency services if there's any emergency, or reach you, and all of that. But really, there's no age to be on the safe side. I would say around 16, thereabout.
All right, thank you so much. We've learned a lot already. Before we go, what would be your final words for us? Advice or anything that would help any parents or anybody who is moving to the UK or who lives in the UK already?
What I would say is that don't scare your children. So I know what we do is we tell our children that when you go to school, don't tell them anything happening at home. Don't tell them that I'm hitting you and all of that, because you do not want to take the pain. It's actually more difficult to go via the non-violent approach. The approach where you're not hitting your child. It's actually easier for me to just give a child a slap, and then it's a quicker intervention, isn't it? But we haven't dealt with the root of the matter, and because you do not want to go through that long route of looking for and working on yourself, on your patience, and working with your child through all of these things, and properly training them, and not just using the cane or the rod and hitting them, because that's not proper training. You could then put the responsibility on your child to say, do not tell them in school if they ask you, don't say I'm doing, because they remove you, then scaring your child. They will remove you from my care. Please don't do that, because you're telling your children not to be truthful, and that's not something that you want to teach your child, because they are then a bit confused. And social workers and teachers who come to go to school and see your child in an environment where they feel safe, playing with all of these nice toys and crafts, being really kind and listening to them, a child will know when they tell. So why don't you as a parent sit down, talk to them, have that relationship that they can feel able to have good conversations with you. Whatever the conversation, even if they do something wrong, they won't feel like, hey, God, that is going to bring down the whole house. You will handle it as an emotionally mature parent, because this shouting and this thing, whether we like it or not, it's not like an African thing. It's just that we are not. It's how we manage our emotions, so that we are not properly emotionally trained. Yeah. So because we can't handle our emotion, we lash out on our children, but we are teaching them to handle their own emotions like that when they grow up. So it's really important. Let's break that cycle. Let's break that cycle. It's not wrong. We could move on. I know that physical abuse is like an age-long thing. They did it in our boarding schools. Our teachers hit us if we don't know times table. All of those things. But we are unfortunately, we're in a new country. So I hope that even at home we can begin to have these conversations about physical abuse and other forms of, better ways to raise our children to be emotionally mature, intelligent children who feel able to compete or stand anywhere in the world without feeling a certain sort of way because of the way that we have raised our children. So that's what I would advise, that please go the long and narrow route, which is beginning to unlearn some of these things that we've carried from home, and learn the ones that will be helpful both for you and for your children. And when you do that, you feel better. You're like, oh God, I'm getting to be quite patient. You and your husband can decide to maybe be accountable. Sometimes the mom might be a bit more on top of it, and the dads might not really understand because they are quick to like shouting and all of that. But then both of you can just, calm each other. I know for me, when I'm so upset with my kids, I don't know how it happens, but my husband is calm and he say, just relax, don't worry, I'll sort them out. And then when he's the one who is upset, I am the one who wears the calm. So it could work either way for your family. But I think it's just worth considering the highway, which is the better way for your children.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your presence today and everything that you have taught us. Thank you.
Yeah, so I've got a YouTube channel which is just basically about just sharing this information and all of that, and just helping you see how just suggest ways that you could raise your children and avoid that involvement with social services. And also,
what's the name of the channel?
Sorry, the name of my channel is Oasis Advocacy. So you can find us on YouTube. It's a bit of a new channel, but we're up and running now. So please do well to follow us if you are interested in learning a bit more about this.
So thank you very much. The name of our channel is the Oasis Advocacy. So guys, please do well to visit and support. All right, thank you so much guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.